with citywide technology efforts. So there's lots of different plays and ways that people are using this technology. And it's the reuse, right? The reuse and the different channels within an organization that will say, oh, that was really cool. That worked well at a trade show. Oh, can I have that now for my sales kit? Oh, you need to work on franchise and development. Now I can take it to franchise and development and try to sell it there as well. So I think it's that reuse of assets over and over that is kind of glossed over, but could really be leveraged by any business who's got sort of any big, huge product or any small product as well.
So I can't speak to the technical side of VR, but I will tell you from a business, marketing, a brand side for any industry, experiences drive emotion, and emotion is what connects people to a brand or an organization. And the more immersive you can make that experience, the more engaging you make that experience, the greater the impact you're going to have. And I've seen that in any industry that I've ever worked in. So, you know, for the example of a PowerPoint, absolutely much more engaging. And as far as how we might use it again at Make-A-Wish, we used it this time to grant a purple wish. So are there other opportunities to use that in wish granting? Probably. But what about other areas? We don't know yet, but we're asking the questions, and it's important to ask those questions from a business point of view. What about from a donor experience? What if you're a donor, and I mentioned earlier, you probably don't all know Make-A-Wish the way you think you do know Make-A-Wish. Now imagine I put a headset on you, and I strap you into an immersive experience where your surroundings are now sitting in a chemo chair or a hospital bed, and there's sounds, and there's tubes, and there's doctors walking around, and there's that anxiety. And now I transform you to a beach, or the Magic Kingdom, or somewhere else, right? I've now created a much more immersive experience that creates a much more compelling view of what we do and what we're trying to accomplish.
Can I actually, I'd like to riff on that a little bit too. So, yeah, a lot of people think of VR as just being kind of this gee whiz thing right now, right? It's a gee whiz, oh, you know, like, is there really a business case for this or whatnot? But, I mean, yeah, it is, it'll actually get people excited to come to your event or your trade show booth or you know, whatever. But the level that's higher than that, and I think probably how we mostly end up doing business in this area, is because it is in fact immersive, right? It actually feels like you're in there. And when you put somebody in that experience, they hear your message. And you can compare and contrast that to more traditional forms of media that people have seen over and over again, and it's super powerful.
Yeah, I know that there is research coming out of multiple universities. One, UGA, they're working on finding out how virtual reality is actually impacting memory and perception in regards to advertising. So there are a lot of, I guess, research projects going on that are kind of trying to prove how effective it is, but a lot of us who are kind of in it all the time, we see this. And it's exciting to see so many people actually working to prove its effectiveness. I know that, Dave, you talked about solving problems by having 200,000 pounds of equipment being in a tiny little 1-pound device, and you solved the problem of going to Saturn with a virtual reality experience. So I feel that in many projects that brands or companies are going to take on, they have to be solving a problem. So what are the biggest problems you guys see VR solving? And it can be either something you have experience with or something that you see as an industry trend, like in the medical industry or wherever you've seen it most. Anyone?
I think to speak in general about travel, there's a big play in the travel industry today to use VR to get to new destinations and things like that. But I think, to your point, Annie, if you can think about solving a business problem and shortening a life cycle or streamlining a process that might take days or weeks, that if you could collaborate in a virtual environment together with regional counterparts that might be around the world, that's where I think there's a big time cost, there's the ROI at the end of the day. If you can start to streamline processes, think about taking steps out of a process or finding a unique way to bring people together in a different way to collaborate. I think those are the key areas, and it could fit in any business. It doesn't need to be a specific vertical, because I'm sure anybody in the business world would say, oh, I'd love to cut out, these 8 steps, and if I just had all those people together in the same room, and it just doesn't work on the phone, but if you could get together virtually, all look at that in 3D and say, oh yeah, a lot of times it's used in automobile right now, and they'll all get together and focus on all the different aspects of the car. But it might be that parts of that car are made in Japan, and parts of that car are made over in Germany, and the other parts of that car are made here in the States, and that auto manufacturer never gets to put all those pieces together until they see it together in VR. So if you got that sort of multi-layer corporation that's got pieces and parts everywhere, I definitely see a big value.
Yeah, so we actually had a really interesting project we worked on with Dave for Arby's. They had a project for their franchise association meeting. They had about 5,000 people coming to this one big convention. And they were trying to get all these guys to sign up to redo the inside of their stores. I don't know how many of you have seen the new inside of new Arby's stores, but they've totally revamped the way that it looks. The problem they were having is guys out in mid-America, there's no way they were flying to New York or out to LA to go see the inside of one of these stores. So what we did was actually go and record the inside of these, create a bunch of graphics that could be optically activated to bring up information they want to. And all of a sudden now, instead of having all these people having to go out across the country to go and check out these stores, they could actually just stand there, put the goggles on at the convention, and there was a direct correlation with the bottom line. Guys that weren't interested in it now saw it, they saw the value in it, and we're actually signing deals right there. And I don't even know if I told you this, you almost got a phone call late at night one time at that meeting. My client calls me about 10 o'clock at night. Anytime the client calls at 10 o'clock at night when you're in the creative space is a bad thing. So I reluctantly answer the phone, and he's out in Vegas. He goes, Ryan, I just need to tell you how amazing this thing was. He goes, it was the actual hit of the show. There was people lined up waiting an hour to get in there just to see the inside of the thing. Awesome. So when you hear that kind of value of it and it's affecting bottom line, to me those are direct solutions, and it's actually helping companies that we're involved with.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. Thanks for saying that in front of all these people.
We created it, remember?
That's right. Actually, you did the hard part. Yeah, and just to kind of riff on that, there's an experience that I'd like to talk about for a second that I think does a pretty good job of highlighting a bunch of different kind of distribution levels for virtual reality and kind of the different ways that it's actually used. We recently finished up a project for US Bank. Fourth largest bank in the country. They have this new rewards and travel card for people that are in a higher tax bracket than I am. I'm sure all of you got your invites for the Altitude Rewards card. It actually hit the market on May 1st, and they wanted to do a full kind of 360 campaign around it. I don't mean 360 in the around you sense, but just kind of a bunch of different things. In that they started out with doing influencer events before the product even came out, right? So in April, they had in-person events with, in New York, in LA, and San Fran, with kind of social influencers and bloggers and people that they wanted to get their message out. And for those events, they used Gear VR, which is kind of a high-level mobile VR experience, and kind of wow the people there. We were really surprised that those folks that are social influencers and seem to be on the cutting edge of technology, a large percentage of them actually hadn't really experienced VR, so it went over great. But then they also, as swag, gave out branded cardboard, which is kind of a step down in immersion and quality. But hey, it's a branded cardboard. They get something that they can take home that's actually got the name on it, so they'll remember it. They can watch it at home, show their friends. And then when the launch date actually came, we made a non-interactive version of it for Facebook and YouTube 360, and they put that on their landing page so that when somebody actually went to their website, they could actually experience there. And I bring all of that up just to say there's all sorts of different stuff that you can actually do with the content. Again, it doesn't have to be kind of a one-off thing.
I'll just add on to that as well. I think from two sides. I think from a vendor side, coming from a consumer, I would say don't necessarily think that you have to hit the grand slam with VR each and every project. So for us, we created this wonderful experience, and we're all giddy about the VR because it's really cool and it was well done and it's really immersive. But there were so many other elements to Zayden's wish from a community perspective, from everyone coming out and everyone that wanted to be involved. They wanted to be involved because it was a great wish and because of our brand, but also because there was that novelty factor from the VR. So leverage that. And my guess is that with as fast as things are changing and as it becomes more immersive, that grand slam is going to come as well. For the consumers out there, so for folks that like myself, or if you're on the digital side of a large organization, I would challenge you. I would challenge you to ask the questions and take a few chances and experiment with this stuff. Look, we've got a big brand. We're affiliated with Make-A-Wish America. We're a small local nonprofit. Believe me when I tell you that every day is a struggle. And we deal with some emotional issues on a day-to-day basis as well. And when we went out to find sponsors for this wish, organizations that maybe wanted to partner with us and help get some exposure to Zayden's wish and what we wanted to do, there was a lot of folks that lined up and said, yeah, we do VR, this is really cool, let's talk. Very few, when it came down to it, actually wanted to step up and try it. We weren't asking that much if you think about who some of these organizations were. So I would challenge you, ask those questions, take a few chances, and see where it's going to take you. Because I think the best advice that Chad from Trick gave me somewhere along the way was none of us really know where this is going. But jump in, start asking the questions now, and be a part of it. And if a small local nonprofit like Make-A-Wish Georgia can do that, a lot of other organizations on the planet can do that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, especially in regards to the experience that you guys worked on, we oftentimes think of virtual reality as something that can bring fantastical environments to everyone. And then a lot of what some of us do is more realistic. So we're coming up with business solutions, or we're doing 360 capture where we're capturing a moment in time, but it is very real, very true to reality. So how do you guys balance, all of you, the capabilities and excitement that the technology brings with the fantastic elements that you cannot experience in reality, with kind of grounding yourself with certain elements that you kind of need, especially when we're working with brands?
I'd actually like to riff on something that you just said, which is, people don't necessarily know. We did a project for AT&T at their Global Network Operations Center outside New York, which is this amazing NASA, NORAD looking facility, right? And so you would think that, and we went into it saying the space is the star, we don't want to put too much crazy graphical, VFX and animation and whatnot over top of it. So the first kind of beta version that we sent out, one of the higher ups, when she saw it, her first reaction was, that console looks like it's something out of the 80s. You've got to do something about that. So we ended up basically creating kind of this holographic looking interface that rose out of the workstations and ended up covering up a decent amount of the space with this kind of cool, almost AR looking piece. But you know what? That's what they wanted, and at the end, the customer's always right, and it actually turned out to be a great experience. But yeah, it's very early days with this. That makes it one of the challenges. We were actually talking about this before. The great thing about VR is you can do anything in VR, right? But that also makes it super hard to actually kind of coalesce to what it is you actually want to deliver.
I think one of the hardest things that we've bumped into is, it's easy to stay on brand when you're doing video, print, or anything like that. So staying on brand in a virtual world seems easy because we're photographing what's around us. But keeping that all on point, because the first instinct when you see VR is you think stuff should start looking techie, right? So everything's got to be futuristic, and I think that's where it's having that ability to hold back on that kind of stuff. Even though we can put anything in the world that we want in there, how do we still keep it on brand? How do we keep that voice the same? How do we keep everything so that it's going to speak the same language as all their other content out there? So I think even though we can do it, holding back on it is really been where we've had the most success.
I think that's a great point, because There's a great filmmaker here in Atlanta, Jason Drakeford, who is working with the Museum of Natural History up in New York. And he takes film and photography from many, many moons ago, literally doing some stuff with, stuff going on with NASA, or, Indian prints, or
Syrian refugee camps,
or the Inuit community. And he blends these amazing old school footage or photography in this new technology space. And he blends this old world with this new world to immerse you in a space that, because it happened, 80, 100, 200 years ago, that you'd never ever get to experience. And to your point of immersion, you get in there and he creates this world with sound that just takes you to another place that you can get the chills that you're like, oh my God, I'm experiencing it in this poor girl who is fleeing Syria for her life, or I'm sitting down with these Inuit leaders and, smoking the peace pipe is probably a bad reference, but really getting to experience that whole environment. And it just is amazing. And then to talk to your point about how brands should be taking this forward and really dipping their toe in the water, Google's out there, taking over the world, but they're also distributing cardboards, and they're bringing VR to 1 million school children in the UK. How do you think all of those kids are going to want to participate with your brand now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't even want to think about just yet. But you can see it even with your own kids and how they interact just with your phone or your tablet. But it's really thinking about the up and coming community of people who will be utilizing your brands and where they're going to experience it, or where they're going to expect your brand to be for them to experience it.
Awesome. Thank you for mentioning kind of some of the more both philanthropical and also thinking to the future and the young people now that will be growing up in a world where virtual reality and augmented reality are normal. They're the day-to-day technology that they're used to, just like I logged on to AIM every day after school when I was growing up. Like, everyone's like, well, kids probably don't even know what AIM is, but anyway.
Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. But there are a lot of initiatives in Atlanta right now and across the world, but I want to focus in Atlanta since most of us probably live here or are visiting here. You have some connection to the city about what's being done here in Atlanta and Georgia right now. I will actually start because we've done some stuff. On the more technology education and getting together large groups of people who are all interested in the technology. I'm actually the founder of the Atlanta Virtual Reality Meetup. If you guys are not members, you should totally be members, but we're over 850 people now, so there's a lot of, there are a lot of people here in Atlanta that since day one when we started it in the middle of 2014, about 3 years ago, we had almost 200 people show up to our event in 2014. Like, most people I know didn't even know VR existed back then, but it did. It's existed since 1957. But anyway, so there are groups of people that are so excited to help, and there are a lot of fantastic nonprofits that are working to bring this to a younger generation to give people the tools and equipment and education to be able to develop for these platforms. We did a workshop for Chick Tech Atlanta. We've done work for Reimagine ATL. There are so many different groups that are working in it, and if you guys have had any experiences with those groups, and also any group in Georgia that is promoting the technology, I would love to hear about it.
Well, I'll give a shout out to John Bazell, who is in the back there, because he's the new president of the VR ARA here in Georgia. And maybe my new boss, but he's the president for the Atlanta chapter, and VRARA is a national, or actually global association who is also bringing together anyone in this VR and AR space. So if you haven't checked out the VR ARA, I'd encourage you to do so. Anybody?
All right, so what have we done in Atlanta? Is that the...
Yeah.
So we actually did a pretty big project with the Metro Atlanta Chamber to kind of help them promote Atlanta, not here, but out at South by Southwest. And essentially what we were doing was transporting people from Austin to see what it's like to live, work, and play in Atlanta. And that's one of the great things about VR, right? It's kind of like it's a time machine. It's a transportation device. I mean, you mentioned going back to the 1800s or something. I mean, it's great because we were there actually promoting jobs in Atlanta. There was a huge jobs fair at South by Southwest, and the Chamber and Choose ATL really wanted to show off. You know, why should you care? Why do you give a damn about Atlanta, right? Well, let's show you. Here's Stone Mountain. Here's the aquarium. Here's all sorts of places, you know, in-town neighbors. We had the Little Five Points Parade, you know, Porch Fest in Decatur, all sorts of fun, you know, kind of little slices of Atlanta life, and that type of thing is super powerful. You know, overall, VR for education, training. I mean, we're super bullish on that. I mean, love being able to put people in a virtual environment and kind of show them what it's like to, in fact, perform a task in a virtual space, you know, transport them across the world to do something or put them in a dangerous situation without them actually being in a dangerous situation. So there's all sorts of cool stuff that you can do there.
Thank you guys. So we have about 10 minutes left. I want to open it up to questions from any of you, and they can be directed at a specific panelist or everyone. I will repeat your questions so everyone can hear. Just make sure I can hear. Anyone? Yes.
So when you guys are talking about VR, are you talking about 360 that's interactive, or are you talking about VR?
Okay, he's asking, when we are speaking of VR, are we talking about the interactive VR that's created in CG, 3D models, 3D rendering, or are we talking about 360? I know I have been referring to both. How about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's talking about a mix, depending on what client you're talking about. I know you guys do a lot of cool stuff in that space as well, especially some cool work with McDonald's that I've seen. So it's definitely a cross-pollination, right? I think it's just you figure out what works for that particular client or that particular brand, and you use the assets that they may have, or you create the assets that they may need. They might have the idea, or they're looking to you to bring that strategy to them. It's really just a work in progress, and I think because this space is so new, there's lots of opportunity to just keep pushing the boundary, trying something new, trying something different, getting inside of a Happy Meal, right? So, you know, and getting to paint the inside of a Happy Meal. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to actually add to that too and just say, yeah, I mean, a lot of it really does have to do with what the customer wants. I mean, and can afford, exactly, that's essentially where I'm going to go with that, yeah. I mean, the reality is that different people have different budgets, and we love doing the more immersive stuff. You know, it's called branching narrative or choose your own adventure, and I mean, that's really cool when you can actually be in a situation and decide, I'm going to go here and there, and there's a whole logic tree to it. Not everybody can do that. Some people really just want kind of a 360 video. It's a linear story, takes them from point A to point B and has a voiceover, and you know, that's more economical. And it's early days, so you know, it's funny, the argument over what is VR, I try to kind of stay out of that, because like whatever the people that we work with consider, some people consider just straight up 360 video, it doesn't have to be interactive. If you have a headset on, it's VR. You know, your mileage may vary.
I think I agree with everybody, but my easy answer to most people is when I'm talking about 360 video, all I can do is experience, I can look around the environment. The minute that I can start interacting with it is where we're really seeing true engagement. And so just having any kind of graphic elements in there, something that keeps me interested, changes the game altogether. Because now I'm not just going, yeah, cool space, move on to the next one. But sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes that's what you're actually looking for. So even going back to, say, that Arby's piece, it was a space, but we had graphics throughout the entire thing that we could activate and look at. I was actually just reading an article while I was coming here today. they're predicting that all marketing is going to move to interactive within the next couple of years. And I think that's because we grow up, or we all grew up, video is everywhere. Anybody can do video at this point. How do we hold our customers and how do we hold our clients? Let's get them to interact. And that's what's going to get you sticking on pages, getting your transfer of clicks and all the rest of it.
Well, good evening. My name is Bilal Hatim. I'm an information designer. My question is mainly for Dave and Annie. My question is going to be around the prototyping process before you actually go into development. Can you describe a little bit what that looks like?
Ladies first.
Oh, I don't know. I'll use
Oh, you don't have a microphone.
I got
Sorry.
one now. I got one now. Yeah, so we've done several prototyping projects, some of which make it to fruition and some of which don't. A lot of times we start, and it'll also depend on if the brand wants to give us more creative direction or if we get to come up with our own concepts. We did a project recently where we had to come up with 12 different concepts, which is a lot. Don't make people come up with 12, it's insane. But they narrowed it down to 3 and they're going to market with all 3. We pretty much storyboarded it out very similarly to how you would a video. We have a software that we use called Artisy Draft. I don't know if any of you game developers use it. It's more of making like a tree with all the different choices and selections, and once we move past the initial storyboards, we move on to that where we can decide how the flow of the experience is going to go, how many different trees or branches it's going to evolve into, and then we can add visual elements there. And then once that gets approved and once we get that more finalized, then we move on to creating a prototype so up until the actual creation of the environments, we do it very similarly, one to a film and do like a video game. So that's our process, and then we generally create a base experience with just main characters, very rough environments, and if that moves forward, it moves forward and we refine the details. But yeah, so I would say like film and video games, very similar.
Yeah, and we're very similar to that kind of in the early stage too, so I'll talk about kind of from there on. And I assume, how many people in the room here are actually in a creative position or kind of work in the industry of creating content and whatnot? If you're in that space, then you probably realize that once you get past the kind of storyboarding stage, there's a little bit of a challenge for what you want to put in front of There's a little bit of a challenge for what you want to put in front of people, right? Because if it's too basic, then they may be concerned that you didn't actually hear their vision. But you also want to get it to, you don't want to get too far down a path that might be the wrong path, and then you have to back up and course correct and go, 40 degrees over here. So it's always a challenge. I mean, I don't have a right answer for that. And I'm sure you see this all the time, right? Because you guys do a ton of storyboarding and getting out there too. But it's part of the challenge is that VR is such a new medium. There are people that will actually view your first iteration, kind of the alpha, if you will, that have never even tried VR. So, on the one hand, sometimes it's easy to actually impress them because, oh, holy shit, I'm actually in a virtual world, right? But you really want to kind of have something that, especially if it's going to be interactive, you want to be able to give them, this is the type of experience, this is how you're going to make your decision, this is how you're going to choose A versus B versus C, because even if the actual, if there's not a ton of motion graphics and like the really expensive stuff to produce in there yet, you want to give them kind of the framework or the wireframe, if you will, the VR wireframe as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We find that we do a lot of work up front. And the more that we do up front, the more it's going to save us on the back end. So we would rather spend a little extra time, build it out as much as we can. We don't want to go and fully develop characters or fully develop worlds to do that. But as much as easy as we can make it for the client to understand, we work a lot with agencies as well. So the problem there is we're handing off to somebody else, expecting them to explain that to their client. It's going to get lost. What we also find is when we actually deliver our final product, even though we call it first draft, it's pretty much 90% done. It's just, there's so much lost in translation across the multiple channels it's got to go and then to their boss and everybody else that the easier we can make it for them to understand up front or the client to understand up front, it saves everybody time and money and our designers aren't coming up and wanting to punch me in the face because resin changes again.
There is no doubt that VR does amazing work when it comes to experiential marketing. We've talked about immersion and what that looks like. For my company, monetizing a VR experience is really important. And ROI, every dollar counts. I work for Make-A-Wish Georgia under Team Earley. And so those Aiden's Wish experience was an incredible experiential marketing opportunity for our audience and those that were new to. We had a struggle on monetizing it. So I would like to ask, do you guys have a really robust example of where you were able to monetize a VR experience, and kind of tell me what that experience looked like, just for learning opportunity?
Oh, yeah. When you say monetize, are you saying like actually, and you might want to leave the microphone over there because I'm asking her a question. Are you saying like, what's the ROI for you as a business, or as a, hey, you want to actually kind of sell that experience, you know, also to, because you want to profit from it as well?
What I'm really interested in is part 2 of that question, but I think both are valid answers to give. But what I care about is, how do we provide this amazing experience and then create an opportunity for people to want to buy into the experience?
So most of what we do is, and I'm just going to speak for my business, and you guys may have different ideas, but we focus on B2B marketing opportunities. So, like for example, and we specifically stay away from kind of the gaming model of creating an app and wanting to sell it for $10 each or $20 each on the App Store, because I think that's a very hard proposition right now, especially with the state of the amount of actual headsets that are out there in the market. There's 10 million Gear VRs. They just hit a million PSVRs between Oculus Rift and Vive. I think that number is 1 million now. But it's still not, it's not like the 2 billion smartphones out there that people are going to download an app for 99 cents and you can make bank with that. So for us, we're selling to marketing departments or working with agencies or recruiting or training, where the ROI for them is actually creating an experience that resonates with their group, or the recruiting, they were successful with their recruiting by bringing more people in, or their training is more effective and they can measure that, like those types of things, as opposed to actually, we don't typically do projects where the people we're working with are trying to actually monetize them. If anybody else is different on that.
Not something specific, but speaking to that emotional element. So Care.com just has done a lot of things in the VR space, and had a very successful campaign and a clear call to action for actually, helping them provide funding and support. So I know that they saw a 6-time return on one of their VR shoots that they did over in Africa. So there's things like that can immerse
Easy
you.
for fundraising.
Yeah, definitely from a fundraising or a sponsorship perspective.
It's brilliant for that.
But to your point, that there's different CTAs that could be included, or what's the end result? What's the goal that you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to sell something? Are you trying to sell a place, a time, an event? I think all of those things have different sort of ROI measures at the end of the day.
This isn't actually VR, but it's kind of along the same stories. So we've been dabbling around with a lot of interactive video. I don't know how much you guys have played around with that, but for the first time ever, we can actually prove ROI on video. We can track video through an entire sales cycle, which we've never been able to do before. Up to this point, our measuring stick was views, right? So you had 50,000 views, must have been a good video, I guess we'll do another one. Now we can actually put in information gates, harvest all kinds of data back from this, send it to Salesforce, send it to whoever they want to get this data, send it to, you name it. It can be used in a million different ways. But it's the first time that we've actually been able to see actual provable ROI on video. It's one of the things I'm excited about, and one of the conversations that we've been having is going, all right, how do we now pull that into VR? And it's based HTML5 or whatever you're using to put in there. It's just a matter of putting another invisible layer where now we can start harvesting that data. So I don't think that is impossible. I think that it's on the cusp, and I think it's happening. It's just a matter of what information do you need, what do you want, and what's going to be that provable ROI, right? You know, if I can go to a CFO and he goes, hey, that thing cost me $50,000, but it earned me $500,000, you better believe he's going to go order a couple more of those, right? So I think it's there. It's just a matter of the way that you're breaking it down, looking at it, and what information you need to grab out of it.
Can I see it for a second? Thank you. This is another thing that's not necessarily a monetary value, but one thing our company is working on is in experiential inventory planning software to do retail testing and product testing through virtual reality. So we've created different environments, one being a grocery store where users can actually go shop. We've used the Vive trackers to attach to real shopping carts so you have that true haptic feedback and kind of sense of grounding for people who are in the focus group but maybe are not as used to virtual reality. And we have been working on tracking all those things. So we're now getting, we're in a traditional focus group, you have human error of the observer. We're now getting access to all the data, what choices they made, exactly when they made them, if they looked towards one item and then made a selection of a different item, if they chose two items of a competing category and put one back. All of these things we're now able to track, and it's kind of like there's so many things you can track anything, that what do we actually want to track? So we have to really refine it and determine what's most valuable to the customer. But one of the coolest things about VR is that you really can track anything, especially in a more immersive CG 3D rendered environment. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. And that's just another example of something that we can use and track and get data back from. We have time for one more question, only one. You already asked one, you don't get one. Okay, in the glasses here. He's coming with the microphone. This one. There's lots of glasses in this room. This one down here. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Dave Beck.
Hello.
So I had an interesting experience during the Super Bowl. We downloaded the Fox Sports VR app. They were using some of our software, but I couldn't get anyone to stay more than 2 minutes on the VR app. They just got tired of it with the main screen. So people got motion sickness. So I'm imagining that your experiences or your products are probably a couple minutes. So how do you dealt with the challenges of your experiences that are more than a couple minutes?
I actually recently did an event with the guys from Next VR at the Hawks. And Next VR is the company that's done a lot of, they're doing sporting events. They did an NBA game every week. They've done a lot of soccer. They did the early presidential debates. They claim that they're getting 30 or 40, yeah, it's the same thing. They're the same thing. And what they're doing is super cool. I'm sorry, let me start with that. They're claiming that they're getting 30 or 40 minutes worth of time on average for people in the headset, and that absolutely blows my mind because I can't imagine that can possibly be the case. For us, when we create an experience, brevity is wit, right? We suggest that it's short and sweet. The more experienced you are with VR, or the higher level headset that you have on, if it's a room scale one, people want to stay immersed for longer. But typically, it's almost like a YouTube video, right? Like people drop out after a certain period of time. So keep it short, keep it sweet. That's what works for us.
I think that particular platform of sporting too is hard. We are so used to watching it in a flat screen. I think where you're going to start seeing a lot more attention is, let's say, corporate events, speaking engagements, that type of thing, where people maybe can't attend it, but I can virtually attend it.
Camera's right here.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Or I could be sitting right here next to you, or I could be sitting in the front seat and I could pick whatever I want. I think that's where we're going to start getting a lot of engagement in VR for longer periods of time. And as we've talked before, the tech is changing so fast too. You look at some of the original VR, your eyes hurt and you felt dizzy after the first couple, 30 seconds. I think where refresh rates are happening, and as the tech gets better, the hardware gets better, is really where it's landing, that you're going to feel a lot more comfortable spending a lot more time there.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing regarding, because I downloaded the same app and I was probably only in for a couple of minutes, and my reaction was, this is really cool, but I think I'm so conditioned to watching football a certain way, and at that point the Falcons were on a tear, and I saw it. I had to be engaged.
That's too soon. Too soon.
Wow.
Are we in the Super Bowl?
For other sports, other events, I could maybe see it being a little bit different, but for a sport like that, I think it was really challenging for me. Now, for Zayden's Wish, it was several minutes long, 3 to 5:20, and so Zayden though is a young man that also has a lot of sensory issues. So we were very concerned along the way about how this might go. In fact, we were concerned that at some point he's ripping this headset off in the middle of it. Now he could just hop back in and do it again, but we took a lot of care into that and had gone through it, and they were so specific on the experience that he wanted. That he got in it, he went through it, no problem, popped back out, said, "Can I do it again?"
Yeah, and in regards to people who may be unlikely to try the equipment and then stay in longer than most people, we did a project where we worked with the retired community at the VA hospital, and they're probably all pushing like 75 years plus, and they're probably the people I've observed want to stay in the longest. So it's really interesting to see different groups, and when you're talking about people with sensory concerns, my brother is special needs, and he goes to an adult center for, or a center for adults with special needs, and a lot of his, I guess, classmates or whatever you want to call them now, they have sensory issues, and for some reason it just works. Like, I can't say that for everybody, this is just anecdotal, but it's amazing. Like, my brother cannot wear a hat, like he will not, he'll rip it off and he'll try on a VR headset. I don't get it, but it's amazing. So a lot of these anecdotal experiences are what gives me excitement about the technology, and hopefully it does for all of you today. And we are going to continue on to some more networking, so hopefully you guys can ask more questions to the panelists. Hopefully they'll stick around a few minutes. Everyone here has come here for a reason, so I hope you all get to meet each other and find out if you have shared interests. But thank you so much to TAG, to General Assembly, to Digital Glue, Media Frenzy Global, everyone who has sponsored and supported this event, and thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you.